Chargers have the number one defense in the NFL after 2 weeks, allowing only 15 points per game. The Chargers are at home Sunday against Denver. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Today, in our first hour, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the First Amendment and good manners. When I reflect upon Fred Hampton and his gravesite, do you know that they still shoot bullets, rifles, and target practice with his headstone? You probably don't know that. Google Fred Hampton gravesite, and there you will see bullet-ridden tombstone. Go to Marion, Alabama, the gravesite of Korean veteran Jimmy Lee Jackson, largely responsible for the events of Selma to Montgomery that laid the foundation for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I've stood in the swampy area that is his gravesite. The Ku Klux Klan regularly drives by and takes shots at the headstone of Jimmy Lee Jackson. Speaking ill of the dead, that's just bad manners. Almost no one speaks ill of the dead, but the idea of shooting up tombstones is part of the sordid history of what it means to be an American, certainly a Black American activist who fights for justice. I bring this up because I don't believe in speaking ill of the dead, but I am concerned about what the living says, what it has says, and the erosion of our First Amendment rights. When we look at the departure of Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel for speaking their mind, and we think about the events of last week in Utah, and we think about the things that spewed from the mouth of Mr. Kirk, almost what everyone else says pales by comparison. Comedians and satire telling jokes or giving major speeches for human rights. In that First Amendment space, we have the right to say what we want to say and say it how we want to say it. That's what the First Amendment allows us to do. It really is the cornerstone of a free republic. And even before there was a republic, we were endowed by God with this right to freedom of speech. But the early founders of this country and the early Americans realized that authoritarian regimes, like the possibility and potentiality of our republic on September 17th, 1787, they needed to spell out freedom of speech in the Constitution, specifically for fear that someone would attempt speech. That's how it made it to the Constitution in the first place. Freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, These basic rights, the early Americans did not trust to leave in the hands of the government. So the late Mr. Charlie Kirk could say just about anything he wanted to say about the LGBTQ community, African Americans, African American women, black men who fly airplanes. He could say that we were all woke, that we weren't qualified to be in schools. He could say whatever he wanted to say, but any criticism or critique of Mr. Kirk can land you in an unemployment line somewhere in the United States. My very first guest on Worldwide with Jesse Jackson Jr. is going to be none other than the new host of the show, Dr. P.L. De Silva, who has over 20 years experience of backroom diplomacy, mediation, and negotiation. He has taught politics, international relations in several graduate, undergraduate programs at universities in New York, New Jersey, Long Island, and Queen's University of Belfast in Northern Ireland. Dr. De Silva's publications include Postmodern Insurgencies, Political Violence, Identity Formation, and Peacemaking in Comparative Perspectives. Dr. De Silva, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to a productive hour.
I am certainly looking forward to you as well. Dr. De Silva, we have about 2 minutes before we come forward. The First Amendment, not only in the United States, but it appears to be under attack all over the world by authoritarian regimes. Your initial thoughts on the preservation of such a fundamental right?
It's something that we, the people, have to fight for. And you can see that in South Asia, in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, in Nepal, that young people are in the streets demanding, change, whether it is corruption, mismanagement of policies, politics, and things like that. And they initiated regime change. I think the United States is coming to that point because we certainly are not going to live under a fascist, authoritarian, dictatorial regime by an administration that actually just squeaked by to win the elections thanks to the Electoral College. They're trying to tell us that it was a landslide victory, which is not true. And it's time for us to have regime change in this country. We can start doing that by turning out to vote in the November 2026 midterm elections. And we can see out all of this stuff, that they're using, the racist things, that they're using, woke politics, policies. This is all noise, distraction from the actual crimes that have been committed by people in authority, no less the White House. So it's time for us, people of the United States, to wake up and change our history. It's in our hands to do it. We don't need to take all of this, hogwash that is being thrown our way. We just don't need to do that.
Central to regime change is obviously the First Amendment. We're going to explore that for the next hour with Dr. P.L. De Silva when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from Black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, Black families have acquired land through grit faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Loss Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land loss before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandloss.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part, they accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right. So we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2025 Nielsen report.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Light a candle, pour some wine. Grab a roll, the soft kind for a little me time. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear. Wavy edges for my rear. So let the softness caress your soul. Just relax, you're on a roll. Let her rip. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear.
Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear has the same softness you love, now with wavy edges that tear better than the leading one-ply brand. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is Dr. P.L. Da Silva. Dr. Da Silva, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you very much, Jesse.
Dr. Da Silva,
I want to, first of all, wish you much success in your bid in the elections to get into Congress.
I appreciate that very much, Dr. Da Silva. I rarely talk about that on this show, and so thank you very much for that well wish. Dr. Da Silva, let me throw this out at you. When I think about the First Amendment and I think about people of color in the United States, if you figure that from before the Republic in 1619 to 1776, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution 1787, September 17th, 1787, and then the Bill of Rights in 1791, in a real sense, and I can speak specifically for African Americans and Native Americans as well, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution did not apply to us until the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments. And really, in a real sense, the 14th Amendment. I mean, you better not speak up. You better not talk. The First Amendment right was not a right for African Americans from 1791 until the 14th Amendment. And then, if you were an African American, and I would imagine women as well, and others who were not guaranteed the franchise and basic rights in our society, the right comes later. It comes later in our existence as Americans. Of course, white male landowners had the right, and white males who did not own land had the right. But key to regime change, but also key to the sustenance of any free government, is the freedom of speech. It cannot be curtailed. It cannot be quashed. It cannot be incarcerated. It cannot be run out of the republic. And yet we are seeing something emerging in democracies around the world that suggests that the freedom to speak, freedom of speech, is actually on the retreat.
Yes and no. And as in the example I gave you from South Asia previously, young people took to the streets and caused revolution, regime change. Now that is in South Asia, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, and possibly Pakistan. It's been kind of, seesawing in Pakistan. So these are things that have happened in the last few years in the world. So we shouldn't only look at what's happening with all these authoritarians trying to clamp down and say, woe is us. We can have regime change. There has been regime change in Europe, and there was the Velvet Revolution. So there are so many examples that when enough is enough and people are totally fed up, they will take to the streets and they will affect change. As far as the United States is concerned, we have a safety valve to stop civil strife from happening. That safety valve is the midterm elections that are coming up in November 2026. And I urge all the people who are viewing KBLA Talk 1580 that you have to exercise your right as an American to vote. Go and exercise your vote. It doesn't matter what side you are on, but exercise your vote, because it's actually people struggled to get the vote. Women struggled to get the vote. African Americans struggled to get the vote. It is something sacred. We need to use that to change the direction that the United States is going towards, which is towards the abyss, I'm afraid, because we need bridge builders in power. We don't have bridge builders. We have people who are destroying this country and widening the chasms and the divisions that we have in society today. And therefore, we need to see change happen. And I really do want to call up and call to account religious leaders who are sitting on the sidelines and not taking a stance to protect the flock, to protect the people who they are also representing. It's not just only the people who are elected into office who represent the people. It is also the civil society leaders, and foremost among them are our religious leaders. And this is something that we need to get people of faith, to participate in this change.
Dr. De Silva, let me comment on that for a second, because I don't just see freedom of speech as writing an op-ed for the Los Angeles Times. I don't just see freedom of speech as our ability to participate on this magnificent platform every single day. I don't just see freedom of speech when I hear my pastor preach on Sunday morning. My vote is also a form of speech. I don't vote for exercise. I go to the gym for exercise. I vote because I'm informed and I have an opinion about what's taking place. But all I have is this one lever in the process so that not my vote can be heard, but that my voice can be heard. My vote is my voice. And so when I see what's taking place, not only with Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel, and according to CNN, just before I began the program, the authoritarian is now taking a look at other late night talk show hosts that might be threatened by the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. I see my vote in Texas, which is my voice. Jasmine Crockett is my voice. Al Green is my voice. I see my voice in Los Angeles, California. Maxine Waters is my voice. I see my vote in Missouri. Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver's, whose district is being reshaped as we speak, is my voice. And so I see my voice as an African American wed to the Constitution, the byproduct of these struggles, African Americans potentially losing their seats in a massive racial gerrymander or an attack on the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I see it as the silencing of my First Amendment right. Now, I'm all the way over here in Chicago, but I really do respect what Congressman Bobby Scott has to say when he speaks on the floor for me from Virginia, and when Jim Clyburn speaks for me from South Carolina, and when Raphael Warnock speaks for me from Georgia. In other words, my voice isn't just something I scribble on a piece of paper or a sign that I hold. My vote is my voice. And I see an attack on my voice, my First Amendment free speech rights, not only at the polling place. I do see it in the form of changing and fundamentally altering the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And I'm sure that there are other African Americans who see their voice and their vote that way as well. We may not have received all of the reparations or any of the reparations that we think we're entitled to, but certainly a good first step is Medicaid. Certainly a good first step is Medicare. Certainly a first good step is government programs that provide the least of these with the basic sustenance that we need in our society, and we see it all being taken away. Dr. De Silva?
It is hard to live in the United States of America today under the diktat of Trump and co. It is really hard. And it's just not only our freedoms that are being taken away. You just go to the supermarket and a small litmus test, look at the price of eggs. That will tell you whether the man sitting in the White House is doing a good job or not. He said in England that he brought in $17 trillion into the US economy in the 8 months that he's been in power, which is a barefaced lie. And the thing is, he's getting rid of all the inspectors general. He's getting rid of all the checks and balances that we have as a free and democratic society, so that the robber barons are able to do as they please, that the law does not apply to them. And we have become a lawless society. So in order to redress this, we urgently need regime change. Without changing the regime in this country, we need to have change, to have empathy for people. I mean, how can you cut Medicaid for poor, older people? Medicare, dismantling of the Department of Education, attacking universities, centers of higher education, which gave the United States a standing as a place where people would come to learn. And we have turned away thousands upon thousands of foreign students who will not come to the United States, but will go to Canada, will go to Europe, or go anywhere else than the United States, given what Marco Rubio from the State Department and others are doing with regard to their visa status and things like that. It's just a very painful place to live in the United States. And it is time for us. We shouldn't be just preaching to the choir. We need to get this message out onto the streets so that people start waking up, because we seem to be asleep. And the country is in peril. I really do believe that the country of the United States of America is in peril.
I am deeply concerned about about what's taking place. And I think most Americans are at home watching these programs in horror as the news begins a cycle of intimidation that many voices don't want to speak up. They don't want to engage in any kind of constructive dialogue for fear that anything they say can be misconstrued or misunderstood and literally change the trajectory of their lives. That kind of fear I don't think works in a democratic republic. I just don't think it works in any country whatsoever. And so I'm glad here at KBLA, we still have our voices and we can continue to fight back as best we possibly can under some fairly extraordinary circumstances. Dr. De Silva, we have just a couple of minutes. Can I turn our attention now to more global events? We've seen the Israeli government now move into the Gaza Strip with a new ferocity. Your thoughts on what this new engagement in what we thought was a conflict that was coming to an end truly means?
This is the terrible destruction and the genocide being wrought by the Israelis. And on the 16th of September, Navi Pillay from the United Nations and the Independent Commission ruled that Israel is carrying out genocide in Gaza. And one of our senators has also echoed that after 2 long years. He also says that Israel is committing genocide. Now, the thing is, Gaza City is a highly populated place. Some people are leaving, others simply don't have the strength to leave. And the Israelis are firing artillery into a built-up space, and that is a war crime. You can't use heavy artillery, battlefield weapons in urban spaces. It's something that's, the laws of war prohibit. But the laws of war have been tossed out, and Israel does not care about what the world community is saying. So many countries have turned their backs on them, but it's the United States that is holding out an umbrella for the Israelis to shelter under. And as long as the United States of America continues to give the Israelis, and Netanyahu in particular, a free pass, they will commit atrocities. And this whole notion, my favorite quote is from Voltaire. Voltaire said, "If we believe in absurdities, we shall commit atrocities." And I think Israelis and Zionists in particular need to take a long, hard look at what Voltaire had to say.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on this thought-provoking Thursdays. We're live on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, more with Dr. P.L. De Silva.
The biggest names. Those best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams is raising concerns about school bathroom policies.
And I do not believe a safe environment is allowing boys and girls to use the same facility at the same time.
He stresses that while he respects gender identity, boys and girls should not be in the same bathroom at the same time. Former President Barack Obama is slamming the Trump administration after Disney suspended Jimmy Kimmel's show, calling it government coercion and a threat to free speech. The move came after FCC Chair Brendan Carr pressured Disney over Kimmel's comments on Charlie Kirk's killing. Top Democrats are now demanding Carr resign. And Martin Luther King III spoke at Norfolk State University's 90th anniversary breakfast, praising federal funding increases for HBCUs, but also noting the money is being redirected from DEI grants at other minority institutions. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
This season, San Diego is playing at home, and you are on the roster. Don't miss the Padres, Wave FC, San Diego FC, and the Blue Angels at the Miramar Air Show. Plan your trip now at sandiego.org/awesome all year. Funded in part with City of San Diego Tourism Marketing District Assessment Funds.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers got a strong pitching performance from Blake Snell to beat Philadelphia last night 5-0. Snell had a season-high 12 strikeouts in 7 innings. The Dodgers got home runs from Freddie Freeman Freeman and Shohei Ohtani, his 51st this season. The Dodgers maintained their 2-game lead over San Diego in the NL West with 10 games left in the regular season. The Chargers placed All-Pro linebacker Khalil Mack on injured reserve, which means he'll miss at least the next 4 games. Mack was diagnosed with a dislocated left elbow. He was injured in the first quarter of the Chargers' win at Las Vegas Sunday night. The 34-year-old Mack has started 52 of 53 games with the Chargers. By the way, the Chargers have the number 1 defense in the NFL after 2 weeks, allowing only 15 points per game. The Chargers are at home Sunday against Denver. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Hey, can you blow up some balloons for Jack's party?
I can't. I'm so congested.
You need Sinex Severe from Vicks.
Sinex Severe nasal spray.
Yeah, just Sinex. Breathe.
Sinex Severe instantly relieves nasal congestion and works 6 times faster than nasal decongestant tablets. The 12 hours of relief allow you to get back to the moments that matter without congestion.
Daddy, we need more balloons.
On it.
Try Sinex Severe from Vicks. Just Sinex. Breathe. Use as directed.
It all comes down to this, folks.
Yep, the entire season is on the line.
But my throat has officially thrown in the towel.
Sounds like you need Vicks VapoCool drops. They're max strength and vaporize sore throat pain.
Whoa! These VapoCool drops hit fast.
Speaking of fast, did you just see that play?
Yeah, he vaporized that ball.
That pun should have come with a penalty.
Vaporize sore throat pain with Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed. VapoCool.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Dr. P.L. De Silva is the co-founder and professor of W.D. Lakshman, former Vice Chancellor, University of Colombo, of the International War-Related Trauma and Humanitarian Intervention Trust, setting up psychosocial training programs for practitioners serving combatants, non-combatants during Sri Lanka's civil war. Dr. De Silva, you've got some sense of what it means to live, to work, and to help people with problems in war-torn areas. And just before the break, we were talking about the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip.
Yes, I mean the thing is, it's not just only physical wounds and disablement that happens in when warfare happens. And as you see, the largest number of amputees are now in the Gaza Strip, and children who have been affected, they've seen their families slaughtered before their eyes. It's also the mental health aspect of it. So it's psychosocial. It's not like what we do here in the West, where it's one-on-one. You sit on a couch and you have a psychiatrist or a psychologist to kind of talk things through with you. In war-torn, deeply divided societies, combat brings about the traumatizing of whole communities, whole societies, and therefore you need to address all of it's the psychosocial aspect that needs to be addressed for people to overcome the absolute traumas that they have suffered. I mean, personally myself, I had PTSD coming out of the civil war in Sri Lanka, and it took me writing my PhD, looking at the whole deep questions of morality, killing, warfare, to be able to come to terms with my own PTSD. So similarly, there are things that need to be done at a societal level in deeply divided societies. And we need to help the Palestinian people, not just only to band-aid or surgeries and things like that and patch them up and send them back. The mental health dimension takes decades. There were World War II veterans who decades later started showing signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. And these are some of the things that we need to understand, that this kind of mental scarring is for life. And it's not just only on the side of the victims, the Palestinians. On the side of the Israeli soldiers who are killing, the Israeli government doesn't want us to know how many soldiers have actually killed themselves, suicide, because of all the trauma that they have witnessed. And recently, they actually confronted the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, waiving the psych drugs that are being given to them to kind of numb them down so that they can go on with killing. We human beings, we actually are meant to be empathetic. We are not meant to be monsters. We are not. But when we engage in monstrous actions, we also, it's a double-edged sword. It also affects us, the perpetrators, as well as the people who are being traumatized, victimized, killed, genocide, starvation, all of these things. But it works both ways. We are supposed to love, as what is said in the good book. Love is the answer, not war, not all this unspeakable cruelty.
I'm thinking, Dr. De Silva, in this moment, that the failed resolution of the conflict in the Ukraine must also be having the same consequences and ramifications for those families as well.
100%. So Ukrainian children who are being brainwashed, they have been kidnapped, they're in Russia, they've been brainwashed. But these kids will carry mental health scars for the rest of their lives, because they will not forget their lives in Ukraine as Ukrainians easily, whatever the Russians do to them. And similarly, all of the attacks, all of the killings, all of the drone warfare, missiles flying this way, that way, and the other, and also for Russian soldiers. So I would like to see, some kind of study being done of Russian soldiers, of Israeli soldiers, and to see how far all of this combat and warfare affects them.
Dr. De Silva, is there an entity left in the world that can bring people together? I know the role the United States used to play in the Middle East. I understand the role that the U.S. used to play in Eastern Europe as well. But it just seems that there are no players on the world stage who are in a position to bring parties together to resolve conflict. I know that was at the core of who Joe Biden was. It certainly was the core of who Hillary Clinton was. I believe it was at the core of Barack Obama. But America today is not even viewed in the present world context as even close to being able to pull two parties together or multilateral parties together to solve conflict.
So solving conflict involves soft power. It doesn't involve hard power. It doesn't involve coercion. It doesn't involve bombs and planes and artillery and, ships of war. It needs soft power. But unfortunately, under the Trump administration, soft power is being dismantled, dismembered. The USAID used to deliver soft power and could have been in a position to engage in some of this work. But I think faith-based actors need to be called to account because they're in every single of these countries where, deeply divided societies. And we need the faith-based actors to save themselves and their people because there's nobody, no shining white knight on a horse that's going to come and save the Palestinians or the Ukrainians or the Sudanese. It's not going to happen. People have to do it for themselves. And same goes for this country. Nobody's going to come and save us. We have to save ourselves. And in order to do that, the first most important thing is to understand what's happening and resist that we are not going to be taken for a ride and that we are not going to be run over roughshod. We are not. Whether it is Kimball or, all of the things that are happening and the use of the FCC, the use of the Supreme Court to rubber stamp the terrible decisions that are being taken by the Trump administration. These are things that have to be resisted, and it has to be resisted across the board. But people, it's the common people. The people are the ones that it's their future. They need to take a step. And I keep telling my students, I say, listen, we've run our race. We have nothing to prove. The future belongs to you, young people.
When we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show with Dr. P.L. De Silva, I want to ask you about generational trauma. And that's what I've heard from your response to the Gaza Strip. That's what's happening to young Ukrainians, if you will. But it's also the same trauma that my dad and other young people witnessed when they saw Martin Luther King Jr. gunned down. And I think in Utah, without any equivocation, thousands of people stood there and watched a man gunned down. And the traumatic effect, as you know, can be felt for generations as well in the body politic. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, more with Dr. P.L. De Silva, our host of Worldwide on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward on KBLA.
Are you stuck in traffic? We can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm LA City Councilmember Curran Price, inviting you to the 30th anniversary of the Central Avenue Jazz Festival, Saturday, September the 20th, from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. We've got 4 pavilions, 3 stages of live music, plus food, fun, and a marketplace all along historic Central Avenue between MLK Boulevard and Vernon Ave. Our featured acts this year are Gregory Porter, Pancho Sanchez, and Jasmine Horn at the 30th anniversary of the Central Avenue Jazz Festival, Saturday, September 20th, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. along Central Avenue between MLK Boulevard and Vernon Avenue. Come out and bring the whole family because this legendary celebration is free. For more information, go to centralabjazzfest.com. I'm LA Councilmember Curran Price, and I absolutely approve this message.
Dr. Renee here. Did you know this time of year is considered peak asthma season because we typically see a spike in asthma-related hospitalizations? If you have asthma and are having difficulty breathing despite medication, it's time to check in with your doctor so you can help avoid landing yourself in the hospital this season. To learn more about managing your asthma, visit www.luma-edu.com. That's LUMA-edu.com. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
September is World Alzheimer's Month, a time to shine a light on a public health crisis that hits Black families hardest. 1 in 5 Black adults ages 70 and older is living with Alzheimer's disease, or AD, and it's not a normal part of aging. Early signs like repeating questions, missed appointments, even trouble handling bills might seem small, but they matter. The good news? There are treatment options available that may slow AD when diagnosed early. Don't wait. Visit treatalzearly.com. That's treatalzearly.com to learn more. This message is brought to you by AZI.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is Secret Clinical dominating extra stinky stress sweat. And this is regular deodorant. Secret Clinical in a heat wave. Oh, what a beautiful day. This is regular deodorant. Ugh, I can't. Secret Clinical with workout sweat. Let's run another marathon. And regular deodorant. How much more? Secret is the GOAT because nothing fights sweat better. Stay fresher under pressure.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. In our next hour, The World House with Dr. Johnny Mack. I look forward to his show every week because he's such a calming presence in a world that seemingly is always falling apart. But in this hour, my very special guest on Worldwide on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show is Dr. P.L. Da Silva. Dr. Da Silva, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I repeat, we are all rooting for you in your bid for Congress.
Dr. Da Silva, I appreciate that very much. Listen, before the break, we were talking about the traumatic experiences of the Palestinian people and young Palestinians growing up in a war-torn part of the world, only knowing heavy artillery and war. We were talking about the families and the children as well in the Ukraine and the traumatic experiences associated with that dynamic as well. The Congo and other parts of the world, the Sudanese are also finding themselves in these traumatic experiences. But in America, we have experienced our own traumas. My father, Andrew Young, Ralph Abernathy, and others who were in Memphis on April 4th and saw Martin Luther King Jr. shot were traumatized by that event. It literally changed the destiny and the direction and the trajectory of their lives. And thousands of young students in Utah last week witnessed something that was horrific. It's a turning point in their life. For some of us, 911 is a turning point in our lives. And for others of us, we remember when, well, I don't remember, but there are those who remember where they were when John F. Kennedy was shot. But they were there and they saw it. And in short order, 35,000 inquiries around the country to start turning point organizations in response to that event. Dr. Da Silva, help us in these, if you will, these battle-ridden communities, whether it's political battles or whether they are hot war battles. How do we address the trauma? How do we overcome the trauma?
So we had a discussion about this in my undergraduate class, and so it was a debate between students about the events in Utah, and my response was to allow the students to have a debate and to discuss the matter. And I always tell them that my classroom is a safe space where you can discuss things as long as you are respectful of each other. And it is very important because no one has the right answers. Nobody knows the truth. It is something that we have to kind of figure out for ourselves. And one of the things that I did was to share the original I Have a Dream speech from Martin Luther King, and also President Nelson Mandela's speech in 1980 to Harvard University, because I want to show that it's just not only the smallness of the discourse that's going on now.
KBLA 15.
We are trying to have, we have giants who walked among us, as you were saying. So Martin Luther King was a giant. Nelson Mandela was a giant. Martin Luther King died for what he spoke for. Somebody who was not that much of a giant, but people are trying to make him into a giant, got killed in Utah. But the thing is, if we look at this country, and if you look at the assassinations that have been going on, Lincoln getting assassinated, JFK getting assassinated, assassinations seem to be part of the history and fabric of the United States of America. And I think that is a problem that has not been redressed. And the more we have people pouring fuel onto fire, it will create trouble for the people living in this country. We need bridge builders. We need people to build bridges between communities, not to tear our communities and peoples apart. I don't see any bridge building coming from the White House, none at all. And this is why I want to hold accountable our religious leaders, that it is their duty and their responsibility to bring our communities into safe spaces, into sacred spaces, where we can discuss these matters of extreme violence in a civilized manner. Not over all this rubbish that's been put forth in social media. We need safe spaces, sacred spaces, where we can use churches, mosques, temples, use those spaces to have meaningful dialogue, to dial down the rhetoric and the temperature. We need bridge builders.
Dr. Da Silva, I want to say this because, when I think about trauma and I see leadership through the lens of unresolved trauma, I mean, I can't help but look at the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, and having realized that his father was also assassinated, that he struggles with a lifelong trauma that includes substance abuse himself. And, you know, praise God, he seems to have overcome some of his, some of the demons that have been in his life. But the way in which, for example, he's conducting business at the Health and Human Services Department without science, without credible people being able to deal with credible issues that concern the nation's health, it is almost as if he is visiting his personal trauma upon the American people in some really, really strange kind of way. Now, I am not here, and my listeners know that I'm not here to make any excuses for Donald Trump, because I think he's just awful. He's just evil in so many ways. But this is a traumatized human being. I don't know what happened. I don't know when it happened. I don't know when the idea of developing empathy became the anti in Donald Trump. I don't know when caring for other people became I don't know what black folks did to him one day when he was young, where he swore one day if he ever got in a position, he was going to do it to all black folk or all people of color or all women. I don't know where it came from, but we are looking at traumatized people in very, very high places. Dr. De Silva?
Yes, I would say damaged goods. These people are damaged. And it's like, I mean, they're like human wrecking balls. The health system and the vaccine, mandates that we've had and have kept our, peoples alive for decades upon decades is being dismantled. The federal government and the systems that make our country truly great are being dismantled. So we're becoming a small America, nothing great or big like how people talk it up. And it's a pity. This country is an amazing country. There are amazing people living in this country. People need a chance to grow, to flourish. We don't need to be at loggerheads and at each other's throats. We need to move beyond all of this noise and distraction and hold people accountable for what happened with Epstein. Hold them accountable. Put them in jail. That's what should happen to pedophiles. But let the rest of us get on with our lives without being caught up in this whole maelstrom.
Dr. De Silva, I'm honored that you're going to be spending these Thursdays with me on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on Thought Provoking Thursdays worldwide with Professor P.L. De Silva. Dr. De Silva, the first of many shows we're going to be doing together. I'm so grateful you were here.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you for listening to us on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward with Dr. Johnny Mack, Thought Provoking Thursdays, and the World House when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Play 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams is raising concerns about school bathroom policies.
And I do not believe a safe environment is allowing boys and girls to use the same facility at the same time.
He stresses that while he respects gender identity, boys and girls should not be in the same bathroom at the same time. Former President Barack Obama is slamming the Trump administration after Disney suspended Jimmy Kimmel's show, calling it government coercion and a threat to free speech. The move came after FCC Chair Brendan Carr pressured Disney over Kimmel's comments on Charlie Kirk's killing. Top Democrats are now demanding Carr resign. And Martin Luther King III spoke at Norfolk State University's 90th anniversary breakfast, praising federal funding increases for HBCUs, but also noting the money is being redirected from DEI grants at other minority institutions. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
This season, San Diego is playing at home, and you are on the roster. Don't miss the Padres, Wave FC, San Diego FC, and the Blue Angels at the Miramar Air Show. Plan your trip now at sandiego.org/awesome all year. Funded in part with City of San Diego Tourism Marketing District Assessment Funds.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers got a strong pitching performance from Blake Snell to beat Philadelphia last night 5-0. Snell had a season-high 12 strikeouts in 7 innings. The Dodgers got home runs from Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani, his 51st this season. The Dodgers maintained their 2-game lead over San Diego in the NL West with 10 games left in the regular season. The Chargers placed All-Pro linebacker Khalil Mack on injured reserve, which means he'll miss at least the next 4 games. Mack was diagnosed with a dislocated left elbow. He was injured in the first quarter of the Chargers' win at Las Vegas Sunday night. The 34-year-old Mack has started 52 of 53 games with the Chargers. By the way, the Chargers have the number 1 defense in the NFL after 2 weeks, allowing only 15 points per game. The Chargers are at home Sunday against Denver. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
Jackson Junior Show on Thought Provoking Thursdays. In our second hour, Johnny Mack, Principal and Managing Partner of the Johnny Mack Group, LLC, and the Founding Director of the White House Project. I know that's not right. Well-traveled World House Project. Well-traveled throughout Americas, Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, explicating Dr. King's call to restructure the social edifice and its triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism with a revolution of values that are effected through peaceable power. Johnny Mack, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Hey, Jesse, good to be here. Thank you.
Sorry for my tongue twist a few moments ago. My mind's on the White House, but when I'm with you, I'm focusing on the World House. How are you, sir?
Well, it's good to be here.
I'm excited about that. Johnny, we began last week looking at, through the lens of your thinking on the metalogic of nonviolence, Martin Luther King Jr.'s logic of nonviolence in the 21st century. And before we return to this thought-provoking piece that you have written and outlined, I'd like to hear, I think, Dr. King's logic on nonviolence, not in the 21st century, but in the 20th century, in no small measure because 2 men got lynched in Mississippi last week. One African-American man whose body is now in the coroner's office, and they're doing a thorough autopsy. That family has retained Benjamin Crump to represent their interests, to get justice in that particular case. And a young white man was lynched in Mississippi. And we haven't seen this kind of activity in terms of public lynching since Jim Crow. At least after Jim Crow and the beginning of Second Reconstruction, we've seen, largely under Dr. King's leadership and the national consciousness that was raised by his ethic of nonviolence, a lot less of that kind of activity. Johnny, what would Dr. King say about the rise of lynching in the United States in the 21st century?
Well, of course, King, as we all should be, would be appalled that at this stage in our human development in the 21st century, that such barbaric acts are still taking place, and perhaps, as you suggest, reemerging as part of the day-to-day quotidian acts of human beings, or the routine acts of human beings. I hope that's not the case, Jesse. Your question started with King's idea of nonviolence in the 20th century, and what was it? And it was precisely this issue. Lynching is a direct form of violence. It is indeed direct violence. And another way of describing it is a form of direct action that is violent. So many of us will recognize the term direct action and associate it with nonviolence, that is nonviolent direct action. But few of us stop to realize that direct action can be understood on both sides of the methodologic spectrum of nonviolence. It can be direct as nonviolence, and it can be direct as violence. And so to see a reemergence of this kind of direct action that is violent is really alarming.
It's alarming, and it is designed not just for the victim to feel the pressure of what this tragic events represent. It's designed to mess with my spirit and to affect our spirits, which is a direct action. The symbolism of it is so devastating to the psyche of Black folk that the specter of lynching, period, but certainly the perception that there is mob justice still alive in America, where due process in the court of law, or one is not afforded fair treatment in processes, that you can just grab somebody off the street having done nothing, not even a crime, but just to send a signal. Johnny, the level of barbarism, I just don't know if Dr. King could have given the kind of consideration to what we're looking at today.
Jesse, it's mind-boggling, isn't it? But I appreciate that you picked up on this idea of direct action in your response to my comment. That is, you recognize that direct action as violence is designed to do something in the same way that direct action as nonviolence is designed to do something. And so King explained that direct action as nonviolence is designed to create an environment for something else. It is designed to create an environment that brings people together to negotiate, to deliberate, to decide, and to find ways of talking through their differences and building a consensus and a shared vision around what might be possible. And so this idea that direct action as violence, and I hope our listeners are following this, direct action as violence is also designed, as you say, to create an environment of fear, an environment that causes us to withdraw, to move away from, to separate, to be at odds with one another. And so this is not an accident. This is a form of intimidation that leads to something else. And what is that something else? It is dividing us as a community.
We are certainly going to discuss that division when we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is The World House with Johnny Mack on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from Black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, Black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandlost.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part, they accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right. So we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2025 Nielsen report.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Light a candle, pour some wine. Grab a roll, the soft kind for a little me time. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear. Wavy edges for my rear. So let the softness caress your soul. Just relax, you're on a roll. Let her rip. Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear.
Charmin Ultra Soft Smooth Tear has the same softness you love, now with wavy edges that tear better than the leading one-ply brand. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We are talking the metalogic of nonviolence, Martin Luther King Jr.'s logic of nonviolence in the 21st century, with our host, Johnny Mack. Dr. Mack, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, sir.
Johnny, you know, violence has been a constant companion of humankind since the inception of the species. Some have even suggested that violence is as American as apple pie, right there along with guns. The question that I have for you is this. It seems to me that when Dr. King is reflecting upon nonviolence, he is bringing an alternative into the public space. A space that we did not see it interpreted that way in the past. For some reason, I'm still hearing our music on the show, and I think that should end. Thank you. Dr. King brought it into the public space, Johnny. And I reflect upon my own actions in the public space, largely based upon the King experiment, which matters obviously now more than ever in this space. Without King's experiment, at least from my perspective, we would be spiraling into a very violent and chaotic society, even at this hour. But King at least takes our Christology, our Christianity, and he begins to show us a way out, one that we are allowed to reflect upon. Johnny King in this hour.
Well, yes, King certainly was experimenting. He was experimenting with this idea, this counterposition of violence and nonviolence, and really trying to understand it in the human experience. Unfortunately, he did not live long enough to fully explicate or to explain his understanding, but he left us many mile markers and stepping stones that we can continue his work on in understanding what violence really is, Jesse. And King understood, I believe, that violence was, of course, direct and interpersonal. And we all pretty much understand that. The King also understood that violence is also structural and cultural. More importantly, King understood that all three forms of violence mean social harm. That is, they do harm to individuals and groups and to society itself. And understanding that idea is really crucial to understanding where we are in the 21st century and what violence and social harm is really doing to us. I think understanding that also helps us to understand what the remedy is. I could talk for the next 30 minutes just on this point, Jesse, because too many of us don't understand what academics and social scientists call the continuities of society, the discourses, the structures, the bureaucracies of society that sustain how we interact with each other. And they themselves arguably are violent, and they do social harm.
The entire system is set up that way, Johnny. I mean, the political system is set up structurally that way. It is, when you talk about continuity, you have a party that started out in 1792-93 as a agrarian, property owning, property interest slave society. You have a Republican Party that comes into existence in 1854. They find themselves on battlefields for 4 or 5 years, the American Civil War. And then this war translates and moves itself to state legislatures, and to Congress. War by other means, violence by other means, fighting over resources, where our own value system that we bring to the table itself is subjugated to the politics or the whims of the hour. And therefore, this idea for Dr. King of eliminating poverty is still subject to a process to a violent process.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it's von Clausewitz who says that politics is war by other means.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our political system is violent, is inherently violent.
Mm. Indeed.
And both parties have their root in the Negro story.
Well, Jesse, you clearly understand the calculus of it all. Indeed, politics are almost by definition, you're right with von Clausewitz, a statement that politics are violence by another means, right? So the question is, how do we order and restructure politics? How do we order and restructure the economics, economic systems, which themselves are arguably violent, and even the cultural structures, those cultural continuities that are violent? And remember now, we're defining violence in this case as those processes that create social harm. And that social harm can be understood as those things that limit the life chances and the opportunities of individuals and groups. When you think about violence in those terms, one can quickly understand how violence can be structural and social or cultural, as well as the direct form of interpersonal violence. Again, the issue here, Jesse, is what do we do about it? It's one thing to define it, to hold conferences to discuss it. But what do we do to make the structural changes, to change those continuities that foster harm to certain groups while it advances help to other groups? This is the question that King puts for us in this century.
And he would say, I believe, that laws may not make you love me, but they can keep you from lynching me or discourage you from lynching me. I think in this century, my opinion, he would show a fidelity to the Constitution and argue that it may be too narrow to address all of the needs and to sustain the faith of the American people without additional amendments and considerations, because the Constitution ultimately, for all of us to have faith in it, must work for all of us. I think he would recognize the dynamic that the system itself is inherently violent, that we accept violence into our lives in various ways every single day. Even when the Green Bay Packers come to Chicago to play against the Chicago Bears, we welcome the violence into our homes and into our space. In our sports arenas, we welcome the gladiatorial contest, whatever form it presents itself in. We welcome Crawford and Canelo in the most recent championship bout. In other words, we welcome it in so many subtle ways that the idea of the champion, Mr. Crawford, handing Mr. Canelo his belts that he won that night, giving them back to him, people were like, what kind of gesture is that? And the champion said, these are his belts. They are inscribed with his names on them. I'm going to have my own belts made. Even an act of kindness is seen as troubling in the culture that thrives off of competition and violence in and of itself. In fact, I would even go one step further, Johnny, that Gandhi's experiment beyond King may not be possible anywhere other than in India at the time Gandhi was practicing it, because the society itself was not structured either through colonialism, other than that of the immediate oppressor, the British Empire, but the basic instincts of the people, and of course, between Pakistan and India, that long-standing conflict, but the basic structure of the society within the society wasn't as competitive and violent as is America.
And thus King's call for a restructuring, a reordering of the social edifice, because Jesse, as you note, the society itself is structured on violent principles. Indeed, we focus on direct interpersonal violence, physical violence, for a reason. If we can normalize violence, this interpersonal violence, as something that's natural, it's part of the human nature, it's part of our DNA, then we can also, by extension, normalize the institutional, structural, and cultural violence that hides in the shadows and limits the life chances of individuals, children, and families and entire groups. And so it's not an accident, it seems to me, that we are fascinated and our attention is drawn to these interpersonal forms of violence, even gamifying them and making them part of the day in and day out processes of our lives. It distracts us from those structural forms. Once again, that favors some and disfavors others as just a natural process of human life, of the human experience.
You know, I think, Johnny, in real time, so much of what Dr. King fought for, the right to have voices in the Congress, is under attack. And it is under a violent redistricting attack in the United States, including possibly striking down the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I feel some kind of way about Jimmy Kimmel losing his job. I feel some kind of way about, if he loses his job, what about black folks who start speaking up, like the sister at the Washington Post who just lost her job? What about black media? Oh, we discuss it on black media and in black media. What about the crackdown that could come our way? We think about it. And the context within which Dr. King fought for nonviolence is, he had the First Amendment, he had the right to organize. He even said, somewhere I read, we've got the right to protest for the right. Somewhere I've read, we've got the right to assemble. Somewhere I've read, I've got the right to protest for the right. Well, we're almost losing, Johnny, at this hour, the right to protest for the right. Whatever it was that Dr. King read does not exist in this particular context.
And in fact, as we said last week, Jesse, again, I hope our listeners are following us from week to week. We said last week that there is in process a reordering, a restructuring of the edifice itself. So when you talk about Kimmel losing his job, when you talk about the sister at the newspaper losing her job, when you talk about the possibility that even this conversation that you and I have from week to week may someday be challenged and expunged from the social order, right, Jesse? That is a reordering of the social edifice. It's actually happening before our very eyes. When the FCC chairman can make a statement that says, I don't like what I saw, and a cable network decides to fire its talent because there's something terribly wrong with this reordering that's taking place.
I can't agree with you more. There's no doubt about it that there is something profoundly wrong. It is deeply troubling. It is even more evidenced when we look at a woman who was appointed, a black woman appointed to be a governor of the Federal Reserve Board, and to see her in court facing removal by the administration. It's even more troubling when you see some of the things that the president of the United States is saying about Ketanji Brown Jackson and other people who have sworn a fidelity to the Constitution of the United States. I'm just wondering what Dr. King would say at this difficult hour. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. More with the World House and Johnny Mack when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Security is ramping up in New York City for next week's UN General Assembly. Police say there's no credible threat, but Black Mayor Eric Adams says thousands of officers, counterterrorism, aviation, harbor, and drone units will be deployed.
And we're telling New Yorkers security is a shared responsibility.
Officials urge using mass transit with street closures expected. The Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to overturn lower court rulings that block the firing of Black Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Trump claims she committed mortgage fraud, which she denies. Cook has sued to keep her seat, and a federal judge temporarily barred her removal earlier this month. And authorities say the dismembered remains of 15-year-old Celeste Hernandez were found in the trunk of a Tesla belonging to Black pop star David, real name David Anthony Burke. Celeste went missing last April and was linked to someone named David. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
This season, San Diego's playing at home, and you are on the roster. Don't miss the Padres, Wave FC, San Diego FC, and the Blue Angels at the Miramar Air Show. Plan your trip now at sandiego.org/awesome all year. Funded in part with City of San Diego Tourism Marketing District Assessment Funds.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
UCLA interim football coach Tim Skipper is fortunate to have a bye week this weekend. He's going to need the extra time to get ready for a difficult stretch in the schedule. The Bruins played 3 of their first 5 Big Ten Conference games on the road, starting next Saturday at Northwestern. The Bruins play number 2 Penn State at home on October 4th, but they've got road games at Michigan State, number 19 Indiana, and number 1 Ohio State. The Bruins finished 3-6 in the Big Ten last season under former coach Deshaun Foster. Skipper may have a hard time matching that record this season. HBCU Alcorn State is going cashless for all purchases at their home football games. Beginning October 4th against Prairie View, any purchase at the game must be made with a credit or debit card. That includes game tickets, concessions, and parking. Get ready. This could become a trend at sporting events around the country. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
If you're an African American mom who is pregnant or have a baby under 6 months old, you deserve care that lifts, listens, and lasts. Black Infant Health is for you. It's a free program with individual support, group sessions, and resources to start your mothering journey. BIH makes space for moms and their families to create community. Learn more about the programs in Los Angeles County. Check us out at blackinfanthealth.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on the World House with Johnny Mac. Johnny, welcome forward to the show.
Jesse.
Johnny, you write in this Metalogic, just 9 months before his famous dream speech at the Lincoln Memorial, King gave another speech as significant to his logic of nonviolence. The Ethical Demands of Integration. He delivered it during a church conference in Memphis, Tennessee, near the halfway point in his 13-year campaign. King had by then refined his message in describing the goal of the movement. The democratic dream of integration is the final goal which we seek to realize: genuine intergroup and interpersonal living. In this speech, he turns to the history and values leitmotif when he recognizes that history has thrust upon our generation an indescribably important task: to complete a process of democratization which our nation has too long developed too slowly, but which is our most powerful weapon for the world and respect of emulation. He then argues not only his rationale for an integrated society, but also the framework of values to build, make, and keep society's best hope of a just and peaceful world. I pick up the paper every single day now, Johnny, and I hear about the birth of new segregated communities. Not only segregated white communities, but calls within the African American community that during this Trump era and maybe even future eras, we should turn to ourselves and not turn to the broader community. Use this time to build businesses and opportunities in our own district because we can, quote, no longer rely upon the government for which we pay taxes. Johnny, the era we are living in certainly suggests that Dr. King may be right when he talked about, I've asked my people to integrate into a burning house.
I'm not sure that King is arguing that that integration is simply joining a system with a set of values that deny our human dignity and worth and our responsibility to live together in community. In fact, the very article that you mentioned in that I wrote about in the paper sets forth a set of values that King expects that we will inculcate as part of this reordering of the social structure. And that's why he calls for a revolution of values and mentions that in a number of his speeches and utterances, Jesse. So we are not simply passively accepting a system without contributing to what that social order would be, what those continuities that we talked about earlier in our conversation ought to be, and how we should engage and interact with each other in sharing the benefits and the burdens of society equally, as individuals and groups. Well, if the house is burning and it's the only house we have, and Jesse, isn't that what the metaphor is today? This world house is on fire, and we all must, King says, find a way to live together and put that fire out, or we're going to perish as fools.
I certainly see the social edifice on fire. I see the political edifice on fire. I see the spiritual house is also burning. At 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, we are still some of the most divided people based on race, based on class. In the name of Jesus Christ, we are divided, which doesn't make much sense to me. But I'm equally as troubled by the idea that even when we talk about Dr. King's legacy, we see a structure, we see these triple evils of poverty and racism and militarism. We see this structure, we see this world, this vision and this dream that he has that includes this revolution of values. And while you and I are over here talking about this, 35,000 chapters are now being founded on the exact opposite idea at college campuses all around our country. The Turning Point movement is a surprisingly large organization that did not elevate the human rights, if you will, of the Constitution. They go in the exact opposite direction, that Dr. King argued our God-given rights are inherent in what it means for us to be human beings. But what I'm hearing on the other side is their God-given rights are protected at gunpoint. They're protected by the Second Amendment at the end of a rifle, at the end of a weapon. And I can't think of two more polar opposites in terms of philosophies than that. And I seem to think somehow that there's now even a comparison between the founder of that movement and the founder of the modern nonviolent era, as if to suggest he's now their Martin Luther King.
I've heard that many times over the last several days, Jesse, and I think there's some truth to it. I think once again that the very movement that catapulted African Americans, arguably, out of American apartheid, has been mimicked and copied and replicated today in a counter movement. And that counter movement has amazingly, Jesse Jackson Jr., become more effective in applying the principles of social movement in ways that deny human dignity and liberty and community. How is it that these chapters, these 35 chapters,
35,000
proliferate as they do? 25,000.
35,000.
As they do. What is it about the social infrastructure that has been put in place over the last 100 years, I would argue, that makes that 35,000 chapters possible? And what has not been done well, or conversely, what has been done wrong on the other side of the spectrum that we don't have, or that it doesn't have that same enthusiasm and that same commitment to social change? It seems as though, as King argued, it's a shame to sleep through a revolution. And that seems to be what is happening with the opposing side of this movement.
I found the parallel to be deeply troubling, because there seems to be a large movement, something we've not seen in our lifetimes, on white minority rights. Now they have their martyr figure in that context, just as Dr. King and others were martyr figures in our particular context. And so I don't see much the energy that brings two sides together, given that they both seem to be diametrically opposed around fundamental, what one might call fundamental American ideas. We hold on to the Declaration of Independence, as Dr. King did, that yes, all men and yes, women are created equal. And they hold on to a constitutional value that says whatever these rights are that we have, they are secured by God. And these rights that are so-called secured by God are not in the Declaration of Independence. That's aspirational in 1776. But the Constitution of the United States, under the Second Amendment, this right to bear arms, this militia business, seem to make the idea of coming together nearly impossible. And we can elevate our voices to the highest hills, and we can march that march and talk that talk, but it does not change that basic American value, which either has to be overturned, removed from the hearts and minds of men, and also from the law, to build the kind of society I think you're talking about, Johnny.
Yeah. The question is, how do you do that? We've just been questioning ourselves how the contrary movement has been so successful. But if you think about it, Jesse, that's not new. Even in Dr. King's day, in the Albany movement, in Albany, Georgia, Chief Laurie Pritchard learned very quickly to actually duplicate, to learn from the strategies that nonviolentists, if I can use that term, King and his cadre of nonviolent practitioners struggling to overcome, what African Americans were suffering at the time. Chief Pritchard copied those same tactics.
Johnny, let me come forward. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA 1580. More with Johnny Mack when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Agnes was in deep trouble with the IRS.
I owed the IRS a lot of money. I did not know what I was going to do. I was scared.
Agnes caught a break and found out about Optima Tax Relief.
But when I called Optima Tax, they guaranteed me that they were going to help me out the best that they can. And they did.
Optima stopped the IRS.
No more telephone calls, no more letters. Optima Tax took care of everything. I can finally sleep at night. I was stress-free.
Agnes was finally free from her IRS nightmare.
It was like a burden was lifted off of me, and it was a great feeling.
Are you in deep trouble with the IRS? You might want to listen to Agnes.
I would refer Optima Tax Relief to anyone because they got me debt-free from owing the IRS any more money.
Call Optima right now for your free consultation. Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580 in this final segment on the World House with Johnny Mack. Johnny is one of our most thought-provoking hosts. His seminal research work, After Confrontation, Then What? It seeks to re-articulate nonviolence beyond the traditional idea of direct violence to a meta-logic that includes direct, structural, and cultural nonviolence, each having its own form of social action. His professional work focuses on peace and conflict resolution using this meta-logic of nonviolence. Johnny, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Jesse, thanks for having me.
Johnny, when I think about the social edifice and the extremes that you have written in the paper of violence that exist on both sides of the spectrum, obviously there is a violent radical right, and there is apparently a violent radical left. I've not seen it manifest itself in the way in which it has been articulated publicly on our side. I think that we do largely cling to the idea of nonviolence, but it's seemingly spiraling in a direction right now that causes consternation and great worry, because I think I'm witnessing the dismantling of the non-violent apparatus that matters to our people, whether it's the voting apparatus and the effectiveness of our vote, whether it's our voices and whether or not they can actually be projected, let alone protected when we protest. The idea that the military can be on the ground in Los Angeles and they're on their way to Memphis, Tennessee, and other blue cities are being considered in some kind of a crackdown. I don't see a way out for the resistance, if you will, other than it being mental and in the right kind of space that we find ourselves in. It's hard to protest in this environment. I had a talk with an African-American pastor, very, very popular pastor on social media. He said, Jesse, I could organize a big march, but I actually have to reflect upon what could happen at the march because of forces that I do not control. And therefore, I opt not to call the march, but to lead my protests from my pulpit and on social media. And we're going to boycott these companies because I am afraid, and I do not want to be responsible, not for the followers who believe in this logic, but the circumstances today that included, for example, the Kyle Rittenhouse, that includes political assassinations, that includes violence on a scale from the government that we haven't seen before. Johnny, this is deeply troubling to me.
And it ought to be, Jesse, to all of us. Again, you've hit on some really important chords, though, Jesse. We are experiencing not just greater physical violence, that's almost a distraction, Jesse, from the other forms of violence. When when we think about the acts, the Patriot Act, think about what was put in place right after 9/11. Think about how we are now surveilled as a society and how today's technology makes that possible. Think about how, as we said in the last segment, these 35,000 chapters of
The Turning Point organization.
Turning Point movement, how these have come to be. They've come to be, Jesse, because, or not by themselves, not by accident, not by some natural process, but people have studied the social structure, the social systems, the national discourse. And over time, they've put into place gerrymandering systems. They've learned how to give, stay with me now on this, they've learned how to give Mid-America a veto in the Electoral College.
Yes, that's what they did.
Not commensurate with their numbers, canceling the votes and the will of those who live on the coasts. What power that has been given to that segment of our social framework at the expense of so many others. How did that happen, Jesse? It happened because people took the time to understand the social edifice and to figure out how to leverage that edifice to their advantage. While too many of us have slept through that social change movement. And now that movement has come into its own. And it has, Jesse, the infrastructures that are necessary to accomplish their ends. And so the answer to the question of how to make the change is there has got to be counter infrastructures and social frameworks. We had those in the mid 20th century, as I mentioned in a couple of our sessions ago. We had our own radio stations, our own newspapers, our own magazines, et cetera. We've lost those. We've lost those institutional frameworks. We've even lost, I would argue, the impact of our churches and how they were used in the mid 20th century and how they are used today to affect positive social change. They're very different.
Johnny, I also think our tradition, I was thinking about something Ozzie Davis once said, and H. Rap Brown is also attributed as saying, it's not the man, it's the plan. It's not the map, it's the rap. But in a real sense, it is the man. Because when you look at an hour like this against a Goliath the size of what we are confronting in terms of the mountain of opposition, we are looking for David. We are looking for the one slingshot to change the course of this battle. And these rocks don't appear to be on our side of the court. The thing that we're slinging, or the thing that we should be slinging, P.L. Da Silva in the last hour said that the midterms are as critical as they've ever been. And I think I helped him and he helped me see the vote as speech, not just as something we exercise to do. But, Raphael Warnock said that the vote itself is a kind of prayer for the world that I want to build. And so when I think about the world house that Johnny Mack is articulating and that we're trying to build here, we're asking a lot of folk to pray through their votes that the experiment itself can survive. If I were Warnock, I think that's the argument that he would be making, because we don't know what the alternative is. That the alternative to this experiment could be something far worse. In fact, more likely it is far worse than stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod that we have had to carry. Johnny, we've got about 3 minutes before we come forward. Your response and your word of hope.
Sure. I agree with Warnock that the vote is a prayer. It's more than a prayer, though. Vote is a form of direct action, and we should not confuse it otherwise. We must also protect that vote. We must also protect the opportunity to cast our votes. And we must also protect the relevance and impact of that vote. And that's not something that happens on election day. That's a process, Jesse, that takes place every day of the year. We have to have a mindset that we cannot relax. We cannot sit back and enjoy the fruits of our orchard, to mix metaphors now, as if one tree of fruit is going to feed us for a lifetime. It is a day in and day out struggle. It is creating the social systems and structures. And so the hope is that we will mobilize and organize ourselves in ways that we used to. 75 years ago, I would even argue, that we don't do today. There cannot be one arrow in our sling, one stone in our sling, rather. No one arrow in our quiver, no one stone in our sling.
Let me close on this note. We must admit that the ultimate solution to the race problem lies in the willingness of men to obey the unenforceable. Court orders and federal government agencies are of inestimable value in achieving desegregation, but desegregation is only a partial, though necessary step toward the final goal which we seek to realize: genuine intergroup and interpersonal living, that each and every one of us are children of God and that we have a right to be. Johnny Mack, thank you for being on the World House this week, Johnny, and on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, Jesse. It's always a pleasure. Look forward to it next week.
I can't wait. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More tomorrow with Gina Towns, where we will be discussing Fat Meat Friday, recovering all of the things that we've done this week and the extraordinary work that's taking place in our society. Grateful to Johnny Mack, P.L. De Silva, and to all of our guests this week. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr.
KBLA 1580.
Hey, Johnny. Thank you, Mr. Mack.